have with us Dr. Govind, Senior Director, Ministry of Communications and IT and CEO, National Internet Exchange of India. Dr. Govind, please. I now welcome all the speakers on the dais. I now hand over the session to our session chair, Mr. K. Ram. Thank you.
Since we are already reaching closer to the lunch time, we'll try to compress this last session. There's an important countryside saying: when you are a child, everybody encourages you to learn more, engage more. The reverse is true after having crossed 45 or 50. Disengage as much as you can and keep your learning as crisp as possible so that you don't have hypertension. No confusion in the old age. Otherwise, you don't know कौन सा कागज कहाँ रखा है, कौन सा गजट कहाँ रखा है, कौन सा बटन दबाना है. Another saying is, if speech is silver, silence is gold. So we'll try to implement these things today. We'll try to be very crisp and short. First of all, I'll request Kapil Awasthi Sahab to make about 20-minute presentation. He is senior security consultant, India and SAARC. I think he belongs to Checkpoint Software Technologies Limited. He'll be followed by Ruchin Kumarji. He is also security evangelist. I actually don't mean because it's a biblical term for India and again SAARC. And he belongs to SafeNet India Private Limited. Third speaker will be Dr. Govindji. He is a Senior Director, Ministry of Communication and IT, and also a CEO, National Internet Exchange of India, NIXI. In terms of time, about 20 minutes, Awasthi Sahab. Another 5 to 10 minutes, Ruchin Sahab and Govind Sahab. Myself, only 2 to 3 minutes. And the audience, as brief as you can be. With this, I request Kapil Awasthi ji.
Thank you, sir. Good morning to all of you. The agenda of the session, as sir said, is securing critical information infrastructure of the country. First of all, I want to say that I'm really privileged to speak in front of the esteemed audience, which is also to be very precise, very relevant audience for the topic which we are going to dwell down further. And I'm also enlightened to see how much initiatives government is taking in various places to touch common man's life. As a security practitioner from the industry, I believe our job is also one of the amongst the most difficult job which we have, because security is intangible. And conveying the message that security is important at times becomes very difficult because there's no return on investment. And the second important thing is, as per the psychology, human psychology, we connect to insecurity more than security. So to give an example, if I have to plan the life insurance for my own self, I would check 100 plans to see which is benefit to myself, because it is insecurity to a life. But when I have to actually go and buy a car, for example, so if you see the probability, because I'm on the road almost 30% or 40% of my time, the probability of me meeting with an accident is quite huge. But when I go to buy a car, I don't really go and check for the features of security within that car. I see mileage, I see the style quotient, I see a lot of other things, but I don't see security features in the car, because it denotes to security as a control. So human mind as a psychology does not connect to security as much, it actually connects to insecurity. So that is the reason why possibly that our job is very difficult to convey the message why security is important. And that is one of the reasons why when we drive most of the project, security is afterthought. We implement the projects and then we think about security at the hindsight that, okay, this happened, that happened, what could have been done to save it. And that becomes much more difficult for us to actually go and implement security because it's already, entire structure has already been designed and formulated. Now we have to do a bolt-on security, which means we have to bolt on security on top of it. Whereas the right security is about DNA, that you have to have that security in the DNA of the process. With this, I will directly jump into the topic. Securing critical information infrastructure. Now, what is this critical information infrastructure? Now, there are 8 sectors as per the government of US who are defined to be under this, and these are the sectors which actually are very critical in the, and they form the backbone of the country. Because if somebody can cripple these critical infrastructure, it can actually bring down the entire country onto its knees. So some of them are more, in context of India, some of them already are totally driven by IT. Some of them are still catching up. But these are the infrastructure which is having a larger interdependency, which means if one sector goes down, it will have cascading effect and crippling effect on other sectors, which is why it becomes very, very dangerous. Now, what are the threats to these critical information? Which are we trying to secure against? So that more traditional threats are natural disasters, right? We have been saying that there are natural disasters to these threats, like earthquake, tsunami, and there are so many other things. Then the threats are war, which is traditionally war from the enemy countries. They try to destruct or they try to demolish the critical infrastructure to cripple the country and to harm our country. And of late we have seen something called terrorism, also eyeing the same critical information infrastructure of a country to harm the country in a whole. But in the new cyber era, something very new is happening, which is trying to attack these critical infrastructure using cyber, because everything is connected nowadays. IT proliferation is such a huge thing, and it is such an enabler to drive that project to the last mile, as we discussed in detail in the last session. This also opens up a gate for a lot of cyber attacks. So that is one reason why a lot of conferences and a lot of emphasis is nowadays being given by various agencies to see that what all those critical security loopholes can be exploited to bring down this entire infrastructure, because now our enemies don't need to really come do war against us to cripple down our critical infrastructure. They can easily do it through cyber route, which is unguarded. Now, the biggest challenge is the attacks not new. They keep developing themselves. The new generation threats keeps coming. There is an entire infrastructure to secure that. But the biggest challenge in this particular space of critical information is that interdependency and the crippling effect which it calls. Because logical hack does not limit its damage to the financial loss. It can very well go beyond financial loss to a physical loss or to an actual loss of a life. Which is what? So you can have a logical failure which will which will result to a loss of life. So this is why the impact becomes the most important part in securing it. And what is our reaction when we started getting these kind of attacks in cyber? Our natural reaction was to create air gaps, which is create isolated networks. So we have a SCADA network. Let's not connect it to the internet, so that we can actually ensure that the threats are not coming from the internet. They are not affected. Most of the armed forces networks are air gap, right, which is not connected to the internet. That's our natural reaction. Was that let's not connect to the internet and let's keep the bad world outside. And we did one more fundamental mistake, and that fundamental mistake is assumes that hackers do not have a domain expertise, especially in case of SCADA networks. We believe that it is a control network, it is electronics and communication network. Hackers have understanding more on IP and internet network. They don't understand. So this was good till 2008. This approach served in some way that yes, we were not attacked too much. But then in 2008, the attack called Stuxnet unearthed or got surfaced. And it actually opened all eyes that even if we disconnect our entire network from the internet, it doesn't mean it is secure. Because it actually targeted a nuclear power plant which was totally isolated from the internet. So there are means and ways we can actually get into those networks as well. And that is the reason why now most of the governments across the world are now started thinking about the frameworks and other things about security, because if the hackers can get into into the isolated network with a domain expertise, because Stuxnet hackers exactly knew what Siemens controller is doing in a centrifugal speed on the nuclear power plant. They were not only IT knowledgeable, they were having a domain expertise of that network. So all misnomers as actually was wide open in front of us to look at that how we can secure the entire network. So what's the road? Let's try to look at and dissect problem into small pieces and see what we can do to in our life, day-to-day lives, or in our day-to-day work life to secure our national critical infrastructure. Now, one very, very important thing is that in 2013, which is the latest trend which Checkpoint has researched, that these are some threats which is very important. And if you see the top of the chart is social engineering. Here it is very, very important, even the hackers are taking note of the situation, that it is very, very easy to trick a user to plant a targeted malware in critical information infrastructure than to really hack the perimeter. It becomes so easy because we're all connected so much that it becomes so much easy for a hacker that he does not need to really do a lot of resources, invest a lot of resources, but he has to just trick a user, critical user, and then plant a malware in his through his laptops or smartphones or whatever you say, and then it actually start doing its work internally. And there are some, you see APTs, bot, and we have been seeing this from last 2 days. What are various trends have been spoken about, so I will not dwell in detail into these attacks. So let's try to put all the blocks together and see what pictures emerges. So there are 3 main pillars for securing the information, critical information infrastructure. The first pillar is regulatory law, law enforcement and certs. These are the agencies which creates the policies, which creates the regulation, which creates the cyber law, right? And the various standards across the world which people are adopting under the national security framework. So that is the first pillar. The second pillar is operators. In our country's context, NIC could be an operator, right? The people who own the infrastructure, who really operates them in and out, those are the operators, who has also equal amount of role to play in securing the critical information infrastructure. And the third pillar is probably people like me, private companies or domain experts. And there need to be synergy between all these 3 together, and all of them have to work parallelly to actually solve the part of the piece. We know the technology, you know the execution, and if we actually are backed by the laws, we can actually change the situation. Very well. So let's see what is the role of regulators across the world. They are formulating and driving the standards. They're also getting into treaties of cross country, so that if the attempt has been happened from the cross border, how we can actually mitigate them, what are the nitty-gritties into it. Build capacity and awareness. I want to spend few seconds here because that's the most important thing as a country we are facing as a challenge. Because when there is an attack, do we have enough capacity of people who understand these cyber attacks, who understand this forensics analysis, who can do for us wonders at the time of an attack? We need to see that a lot of countries are now coming up with these courses, education programs, where these are inculcated as a part of education program and given as a degree of cyber experts and stuff like that. So this is one very, very important point. We have to build capacities to handle these menaces at a larger level. Because we have not yet really seen the cyber war. It's just in pockets, some incidents has happened. But if it has to happen one day, we have to really cover up a lot of grounds to create capacity and to handle those, that particular problem. And the final is crisis communication and emergency warning services, which is like coordination centers, creating national command center, sharing intelligence, which also involves sharing intelligence between cyber world and the physical, physical security like IB and police intelligence, and do vice versa to actually solve the part of the problem. But I have few fundamental questions. Because when we go and talk to the customers, when customers shares their concern with us across multiple forums, we always wait for regulators to drive a standard and then tell us that what has to be done. And this is where I want to link it to insecurity, because do we really wait for police station to come before we deploy a housing security in our housing societies? Probably not. Whether there's a police station near my vicinity or not, I will still put a security guard in my housing society, right? That's our own initiative. We are not waiting for somebody to come and teach us. And similarly, We don't even wait for some standard body to drive standard for lock and key before we put doors on our lock, right? That's self-initiative. We know that this is a bit which we have to do to secure ourselves. But it is not true when it comes to the social world, so to say, because it is not personal. We are not insecure there. It took, actually in most of the 5-star hotel, it took Taj attack to happen before they put scanners in front of the hotel, 5-star hotel, and start scanning. It actually took that damage to happen for us to realize that this is something which is very, very important. So we have also, as an operator, as an equal role to play. While regulatory bodies will drive standards, they will help us in giving us directions, but there are certain miles which we can walk ourselves. So that is the food of thought which I want to say, that it is very, very important for all of us to walk that mile which we can actually do on our own capacity. And if you see, if the answer for any of this question is no, we have to get up and we have to really start looking at our own work life and see what we can do to make sure that our infrastructure is not becoming targeted and we are not becoming that inducing part in the entire crippling effect or introductory element into all crippling effort. And what we have to do, we don't have to go to the rocket science. We have to again go back to the basics. That what are those basics of security? Are we implementing them? Are we actually doing the proper standards, or are we doing the proper health checks and stuff like that? So just to give you some idea about any network today has these two components when it comes to critical information infrastructure. Some of them has the standard IT setup, like end computing, server farm, data centers and stuff like that. And some of us, as in terms of critical information, has SCADA networks, which is control infrastructure, like for example, power sector or a railway has a part of its network into SCADA and so on and so forth. And there is a security challenge in both of them. It's not only the first piece, and we need to relook at this and see what we can do to secure it further, how we can improve, what we can do in a fine tuning. And the moment we see these pictures, the natural reactions again come to us is basically start building controls after controls, keep putting devices into the rack, and this is what we feel the moment we talk about security. But security is not only about putting different controls. It is basically a lot of things to do, what it means to say that it is just not enough to add technologies. It is also how you manage those technologies. It is also where are you implementing those technology and so on and so forth. So what we have to probably go back into our design table and see that what are the common vulnerabilities, what are the intelligence sources which I'm connected to, which can give me early warning system, and what I can give it as a feed. And it is very important to understand, in a normal security, like the biggest intelligence comes from the street. For example, if I have to create a IB network and I have to get the information of a terrorist, it will come eventually from the street, the informers on the street, which will actually tell us where the know-hows of the people who are against us. In the similar way, even if there is a central command center, the actual patterns of attack is going to come from your networks, because those are the end targets. If you will not share that back with the CERT, if there is no mechanism where you go and share those patterns back to the people, or you do not analyze them, then the intelligence becomes superficial. Without any harm. We will know what's happening in the world, but we do not know what is harming us. So that's very, very important to engage with expert and relook what intelligence I am generating from my network and how I am getting benefited from the other people or peers in that sector. And as you know, in the trend also, the two most common vulnerability which we have is the human and technology. And most often than not, we dwell all our time in understanding the technology vulnerability, not the human part of it. Whereas the most often exploited vulnerability in 2011 and 12 was a human vulnerability. The biggest attacks, even in the corporate world like RSA and Lockheed Martin, and are initiated by the social engineering. So those are the things which we fail to understand and we need to see. I will now rush up a little bit. So realign our security strategy into all dimensions, which is threat, vulnerability, and attack techniques. Understand our entire security paradigm, that what is unknown to us. The critical section is unknown to us, which we do not know the threats, we do not know where they are going to come from, what vulnerabilities are going to exploit. And look at it, that how we can bring that or that critical or unknown to a known. Because security is again all about, if I know, I can secure it. The problem is I do not know. So how can you bring down that unknown thing to a known, which I know the threat vector and I know the vulnerability. And within your networks, if you have to see, because we have to see that what is, end of the day, I have to do, what is my bit. In my network, I should be able to track the exfiltration over and above infiltration, which means I should know what I am sending out, which networks I am connecting to outside, what countries my network is talking to, what data is going out. Understand who's the users who are using, whether they are bots or legitimate users, track the applications which have been used, track the content which is being used, geography, and monitor the risk. Now here I went to one of the defense, Indian Army headquarters, and I was just doing some SOC work, Security Operations Center design work with them, and I saw a placard in the back of the commander, and it really hit me in a very important idea, because it was written that you get what you inspect, you do not get what you expect. So if you do not inspect proper things in your network in a proper place, you would probably not going to know what is going to come. Because typical way of our life today is that we deploy some control and assume it to be in autopilot mode. But if we do not implement them properly, if we do not manage them properly, we do not inspect the right places, right element, then we will not probably be able to get the right thing. Now what is as an industry we can do to do only one slide I have on this, that how can we help? We have 3 pillars. We see what regulators can do, what as an operators we can do, and what as an industry we can help you is, we can help you building your controls. We can help you giving you the intelligence of what is happening across the world in your sector and otherwise, and we can also help you with expertise. That if you need design expert, you need forensic expertise, you need any kind of expertise, we will be able to do it. So with this I end my presentation, and I will have a small video just to give you a heads up as to what is in waiting in future. A small video which my creative team has made for us, especially for this forum. So I'll just Can I have voice, audio? Can we have audio? Where do you want to connect?
Hackers penetrate and ravage private and publicly owned computer systems.
Half the planet.
I just arrived from America, and someone has taken my passport, my credit cards, my bank accounts, everything. Someone has taken them all. These people are doing everything they can to keep me from finding out who I am.
I'm doing America a favor. Is the country willing to pay for it?
FAA just issued a critical alert. The entire network went down.
Transportation system's crashing and they just hit the entire financial sector.
You have no idea who you're dealing with.
Jesus Christ, it's a fire set. It's a three-step systematic attack on the entire national infrastructure. Okay, step 1, take out all the transportation. Step 2, the financial base and telecoms. Step 3, get rid of all the utilities, gas, water, electric, nuclear, pretty much anything that's run by computers, which today is almost everything. So that's why they call it a fire sale, because everything must go.
FAA just issued a critical alert. Their ATC net just went down.
We're under attack.
Western and Central hubs are ours. We're just waiting on Mai's end. Hang on. Something's up. All the security's reactivating.
So with this food of thought, I would invite other speakers to talk. I just want to leave all of you with a school of thought that it is in our interest that when we talk about security in our own networks, that we really do due diligence like we are doing with any other project, because end of the day, we all are trying to touch common man's life, and this is nothing more important than saving their lives. Thank you.
It's fine. It's fine.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Am I audible to all? Till the back row? Okay. Great. So, I agree with Manish that security is something which has to be induced into any kind of project or into any kind of system from its very beginning, from its planning stages. We have seen so many great initiatives from MIT, from state governments, in deploying, you can say ICT in public welfare. Some has got deployed and are functional. Some are in planning stage. Some have very good security in terms of confidentiality of the critical information, non-repudiation, integrity of the data while it is residing at, or it is in rest in the data centers, or it is flowing in the wire. Some are lagging behind. The reasons were timelines, sometimes budgets. We have seen that the first thing to, if there is any kind of time restrictions or time frames to deploy the project, or there are some kind of budget constraints, the first hammer goes to the security component in the project. It is generally considered that security can be induced in the later phases, which very rarely happens, because security is something which goes inside the soul of that project, and once project is deployed, then the scope of integration or the scope of adopting that kind of culture goes away. So I'll not take much of your time. I know everybody is waiting for the lunch now. I'll keep it very crisp. Now, as we are moving from governance to e-governance, we can see a lot of visibility of the data. So data is visible to many more people. Data is visible in easier forms. We can do it has increased efficiency of employees. It has increased efficiency of providing the data to the right people, to the genuine people, to the authorized people. And then it has also enabled us to do a lot of analytics on the data. So we can do a lot of analytics, but it has also bring a lot of vulnerabilities in the system, because now data is available to the people in masses. So I can go to the portal, a service delivery portal, and I can access many information which I was not able to do earlier. Since I have access to enter into the data center, I can probably exploit some kind of loophole, some kind of vulnerability on the server itself. I can intrude into the networks. I can fetch away the data which I am not supposed to fetch. So the e-governance initiatives or the digitalization process initiative has been made possible through implementation of IT for workflow automation. When we are talking about security in e-governance, security in ICT, we have to understand the security aspects. The first thing we have to see is that unauthorized person should not change the data. It should be only the authorized person. And whenever he changes, he should take complete responsibility of that change. So there should be proper change control. It is ensured in our law by doing digital signing, so it provides integrity. Again, when he is responsible, it brings non-repudiation into the system. It is as good as having the physical signatures which we are used to do and up till now which we are following. Then confidentiality of data, so that even if somebody hacks into my network or my internal employee is having any kind of bad intention and he is trying to exploit the data, he should not be able to see, view, or share any kind of critical data to the wrong people. Then we have, not all the data is sensitive. We know that there are huge masses of data lying in the data centers, and we cannot think about providing integrity and confidentiality to the large amount of data. So we have to see what is critical to us. We have to do data classification. There are certain technology tools. There are, you can say, there are manual ways of identifying the critical information in the organization. We have to set proper controls, procedures. We have to do a lot of awareness programs. It is very important to absorb security as a culture in any institution, in any organization. If the employees, the human beings are not aware or they are not concerned about security, whatever measures, whatever controls, whatever equipments, technology we implement, it is of no use. Then we have to control the type of queries that can be run by a particular role, so that he is not fetching out or he is not digging out the information which he is not supposed to, and control the amount of information that can be fetched. So information should be provided only on need-to-know basis. Then add the security aspects to bring adequate level of security for the identified data elements. And the most important thing is regular audits, regular reporting, regular analysis, what exactly is going on. Security is a continuous process. A technology or a process which is secure today cannot be sufficient for tomorrow's attacks, so we have to update it regularly. Now, when we talk about security, first thing is access control. So we have to see that the proper access controls are in place. We cannot rely on username and passwords. I have seen that in government departments, everybody is having digital signatures these days with the cryptographic tokens. Same token can be enabled for doing authentication along with username and passwords on the critical applications. So we know that the PKI based authentication is one of the strongest way. There are other ways, software based authenticators. There are, if logistics is not a problem, there are other hardwares which comes along with one-time password generations and other measures. So there should be proper access control. There should be multi-factor authentications. The same token in which we are carrying our digital signatures, that digital signature can also enable user authentication on the applications. We don't have to deploy you can say the other technologies in government, since we are already having the cryptographic tokens in most of the department with digital signatures. Second is data encryption. Data encryption brings confidentiality in the complete system and also the granularity. So if I have encrypted it, I am you can say I am a department or I am an individual in the organization. Only I can decrypt it and I can read it. I can keep it anywhere. It is of no use to any other individual. So since I have the keys to unlock the data and read it, so I am sure that my data cannot be compromised, even by the people who are managing the data in the data centers. Now, when we talk about data encryption, we talk about PKI, we talk about keys. We have to see that the keys are properly generated and keys are properly managed and are always secured. So even if I lose my digital smart cards, my USB token, even if I have thousands of keys, I need to see that I always keep these keys on a you can say on a secure device. So there are very specialized devices available on which these keys can be generated and their complete life cycle can be managed. So we have to ensure you can say security of the key which is responsible for the security of our data. This is a little bit about my company. That's it from my side. I am available for your queries, please. I am giving control back to the chair.
Is it okay? Very good afternoon. I would be brief as I know I am between your lunch and the things. So I will talk about mainly on the previous speakers talked about Manish and Kapil about the critical information infrastructure and their security. So I will delve more upon the what are the critical internet resources and how they are managed, like your domain names and IP addresses. Who gives us, from where it is coming, and how as a CEO of NIXI, we as a company are managing the critical these resources, and other than these are the national internet exchange points. So I will go start from the yeah. So this National Internet Exchange of India, which all you know is the national exchange where ISPs connect with each other. So before the 2003, we didn't have any kind of national exchange points, internet exchange point in the country where ISPs could connect. They were independently working and connecting to the subscribers. So if you have to send any mail from, say, Delhi to Bangalore, so it will go all around the world and then come back to Bangalore. So with the establishment of this exchange point, what is happening is exchange points, different ISPs, whether it is Bharti, whether it is BSNL, MTNL, and Tata, all are connected, their nodes, and we have set up these NIXI in 2003 as a public-private partnership with the Section 25 company. So where these ISPs connect with their routers, switches, and we have a single point of exchange of information, routes, so that the routes which has to route within the country or destination within the country and origination within the country will not go out of the country, so that way it will be benefiting the customer latency and the bandwidth, which otherwise would have to go all along. So major functions of the NIXI are, as I told you, the exchange operations, the registry operations, .in, the country code top level domains, and the NIR operation, which is the third dimension, which has added this year, the National Internet Registry. So exchange operations are basically presently working in the Delhi, Lucknow, Kolkata, and Mumbai, Chennai, Bangalore, Guwahati, and these places. And these are all established with the STPI premises. So they are working as our outsource managers for these exchange points, and main exchange points are in Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, and Calcutta, which are exchanging 90% of the traffic of the country. This is the only neutral exchange point in the country. The IX nodes, there are 42 major ISPs who are connected to these NIXI points, 102 connections across 7 or 8 nodes. The NIXI nodes is active in the international forums like the Internet Governance Forum, the ICANN, Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, which is the global body for getting your domain names .com, .net, or country code top level domains like .in, .uk, .us, and the IP addresses, which I will be coming later. Sponsoring open source projects, we also do some kind of sponsoring projects in the areas of internet promotion. We have done internet economy, how the internet economy in the country, e-commerce is flourishing through ICRIA, and the internet awareness on the IPv6 and other areas. These are the connections, and these are the total traffic which is presently working. In the total traffic is presently 18.5 Gbps, which is the total traffic routing within the country. This is the traffic which is routing through the NIXI, but there are other traffics which are though two ISPs can connect peer-to-peer themselves, so that traffic is also peering within the country. So this 18 Gbps is a part of the larger traffic which is exchanged, which is not including those kind of connections between the say two ISPs, BSNL and Bharti, or Bharti or Tata Telecommunication and all that. So this is a part of the total traffic exchange within the country which is going through the National Internet Exchange. These are the routing policies which you may get in our websites. I will not go into the details here. And routing policies again, which is giving what kind of policy we are adopting to each ISPs to connect in the NIXI. These are the tariff policies, and how the different ISPs pay to the NIXI. We have charging the minimal for the 2 Mbps to 1000 Mbps and 10 gigs. The amount which we are charging for the routers and switches in the NIXI is very minimal, so that the more promotional activities can be done. The next item in the NIXI is which we are holding is the .in, country code top level domain, originally managed by the CDAC in Mumbai. Now we have started operation, relaunched this operation from 2005 January with the service providers. We have opened up the registry with the more liberal policies, the more distribution mechanism, like more registrars are there, so that you can hook on to any registrar to get your domain preferred domain names. And we have reached 1.7 million domains right now, and which we are increasing more and more day by day. Another aspect is we are getting into the local language domain names also, like .bharat. Those who are, there was a talk today, local language accessibility is poor in the country. So what we are doing is the .in Instead of that, we are putting .bharat, so that your name .bharat in Devanagari, Tamil, Telugu, Bangla, Gujarati, Punjabi, Urdu, all these languages, all the 22 constitutional languages of the country are going to have your own domain name in the instead of .in, which is in English. Presently, you are accessing even the Hindi content in the domains through English, like navbharattimes.com. So you have to know that kind of English. So instead of that, navbharattimes.bharat, you will be soon be getting it in the domain names, and accordingly, we are going to proliferate the local language domain names soon within the country. There is a mechanism of arbitrators in the domain industry in the country, which we have out of 1.7 million domains, we are very few arbitrators or few disputes which has come up and which we are resolving very amicably. These are the extensions which we are providing: .co.in, .fun.in, net.in, ac.in for the educational sector, gov.in for the governmental sector like DIT, dot.gov.in kind of thing. So these are the websites which will give you the positions of how to get one domain names and how to become the registrars and how to become those kind of things. Accredited registrars, there are the norms, there are the agreements has to be signed. So this is the second internet critical resource, which is more important, IP addresses, which our previous speakers talked about, because you have to track the culprit through the IP location only. So how either to this operations was done through the Asia Pacific Network Information Center based in Brisbane in Australia, which is the RIR, Regional Internet Registry for the country. So what we said, India is a big country, why not we allocate the addresses directly from within the country? So we have made the policy, we have done that. Government of India endorsed National Internet Exchange of India to operate as a national internet registry 2 years back. Then in March this year, we have been recognized by the APNIC to operate as a NIR for the country, and NICSI has been authorized to do the work, and we are calling it Indian Registry for Internet Names and Numbers. That is the name which we have been given. Mr. Ravi Shankar ji is here, who was earlier CEO of this company, so he promoted this name as per the ICANN nomenclature. So this is the web page of the IRIN website, which will give you the plethora of information, how to get the resources locally, what are the training programs, what are the affiliation, what we are calling the members as the affiliates instead of members of the IRIN, so that any individual, any organization, ISPs, local internet registry, any SME sector, all can get the IPv4 and IPv6 addresses. And as IPv4 is already exhausted, I will urge people to come to the IPv6, which will be, and through NIR, we are giving a cheaper, discounted prices than the APNIC for the first year, so that you will be a lot benefited if you transfer your resources to our IRIN for the time being and for the future, so that all along the country can have a single registry where all IP addresses can be tracked and all IP addresses can be given from the single point of view. Thank you. These are our websites where you can hook onto the information.
First of all, let me thank the organizers, particularly Sanjay Malhotra ji, Secretary, and on behalf of ELETS, Ravi, Anup, Manjushri, etc. Secondly, let me thank the speakers of this session, Kapil ji, on behalf of Checkpoint, Ruchin ji, on behalf of SafeNet, and Govind ji, on behalf of NICSI. I thank the audience for having understood everything, and I assume there is no doubt left and there will be no query. And let me thank the facilitators and others who are helping. I would like to end this session with a historical saying कि जर, जोरू और जमीन उसी की होती है जिसका कब्जा होता है. Now here I would like to add two things as a cop and as an IT man, कि हथियार और IT प्लस जर जरूर जमीन, पांचों चीज उसी की है जिसका कब्जा है. Therefore, simply acquiring is not enough. Once you acquire these 5 things, 3 more things you have to do. Number 1, you have to ensure to update, to upkeep and upgrade so that it doesn't become obsolete. 2, you have to use it effectively and fully, lest your neighbor will start eyeing it. 3, use it selectively and appropriately, because as Buddha said, overuse of everything could be harmful to you, whether it is overuse of internet or mobile phone or pornography or whatever it is. And fourthly, guard it. If you don't guard it, the thief will take it away, they'll steal it. And the various methods of stealing, you know. The normal stealing is there, the hacking is there, phishing is there, so on and so forth. And therefore, to ensure that your neighbor or your rival company or your inimical nation does not steal, immobilize, hack or virus or innovate superior design, you have to ensure to guard your things. And therefore, we need to have, besides what all have been invented by the companies and presented today, a national security policy which will ensure cyber security, cyber forensic, cyber war, cyber terrorism, cyber espionage, CCTNS, NetGrid, NCTC, etc. Using all these tools, we have to guard, we have to protect. The last word I just received during this session, what Einstein had feared. He said, if technology overlaps humanity, then you had it. Therefore, don't let technology or IT take over what nature has created. Don't IT get in between you and your parents, you and your spouse, you and your children. Give them their due before you give it to IT or mobile and so on and so forth. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And to end the session, we have a quick memento presentation to all our speakers and session chair. I request Mr. K. Ram to first present a memento to Mr. Kapil Avasthi, Senior Security Consultant, India and SAARC, Checkpoint Software Technologies Limited. Mr. Avasthi, please. I now request Mr. Ram to present a memento to Ruchan Kumar. Mr. Ruchan Kumar, Security Evangelist, India and SAARC, SafeNet India Private Limited. And to Mr. Govind, Dr. Govind, Senior Director, Ministry of Communications and IT, and CEO, National Internet Exchange of India. Dr. Govind, please. And may I request Mr. Avasthi to please present a memento to our session chair, Mr. K. Ram. Thank you, sir. Thank you all the speakers.